Hey everybody, it's Pandy and I'm playing World of Tanks. This week I'm going to be doing a video on the M103 heavy tank. Shoutouts going to War Criminal. He was a winner of a previous gold contest at some point like 3 months ago. He was also part of Relic and also helped me build a badass motherfucking house on his Minecraft server. He's a pretty badass dude and generally overall reliable. Whenever we're in clan wars and he needs to be Johnny on the spot, he is there, he's on it, and he rapes. Without lube, of course. So, this video is dedicated to him, and I appreciate it, dude. You carry on. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the M103. A little something about this tank. The M103 heavy tank was the last American heavy tank to be in service with the United States Armed Forces between 1957 and 1974. The tank was designed to be a counter to the Soviet heavy tanks like the IS-2, IS-3, and other heavy tanks of the Soviet forces that might have been against European and American forces in Europe. It was designated as the T-43E1, but testing and trials were a failure due to the underpowered engine and questionable transmission. After recommendations from the United States Army and Marine Corps, the M103 was standardized and was accepted into service. These standardizations included many parts from the M48 and M60 patents like the tracks, rollers, and suspension. Overall problems related to the M103 is still located in the engine and transmission because they were never modified or standardized or replaced. So the problems that it faced during testing and trials never went away, so they were left with an underpowered tank and was incapable of extended combat operations until the Marine Corps upgraded all theirs to the A2 version. The M103 never saw actual combat service and was only deployed into the European theater of operations. The United States Army only deployed one total battalion with 6 companies, while the United States Marine Corps deployed 1 company into each one of their Marine Corps tank battalions, which they happened to only have 3 of them at the time. Only 300 of them were made, and they slowly got replaced in 1962 to 1974 with the M60 patent when they became available as a main battle tank. At this point in time, the M103 was the last American heavy tank to be ever in service, the most heavily armored and heavily armed tank in service until the M1 Abrams came about. In World of Tanks, the M103 is not like any of the ginger bastard children I had with all them hookers and sluts from downtown. The M103 is not a mistake and it does not disappoint. Basically, the firepower on this bad boy is fantastic. Even though I'm not a big fan of the alpha that it happens to give, it does put many upon many rounds into the air, just like the T-34 when it was a tier 9 tank. It does pretty decent when facing off against equal tier tanks, and it does pretty damn well against low tier Zerg Russians of many upon many tier 6 medium tanks. The pin does pretty decent against the upper plate of the IS-4 at range, and it has a harder time with the E-75 at range. At that point, you basically just need to use that mobility to get around on the E-75's flanks and make things happen. The firepower does not disappoint, and it does lay out the bitch slapping and the bitch smacking and the hosh bitching, killing. It does not disappoint. Purely, I am a big fan of the gun, and I love it, and I don't want nothing to happen to it. Never, ever. Don't touch it, Wargaming. Don't. Now, the armor on the M103 is pretty good from the front, but the side armor is pretty lacking. It is pretty bouncy from the front of the tank, especially when you're defending and deflecting rounds from the tier 8 guns from all the tanks. Tier 9 guns tend to do fairly badly against the armor itself, so you gotta aim for the weak spots, which are basically the lower plate. People would say the Clopia was one of them, but it's such a small target on the tank, it's not even worth trying for, especially when it's that small. Unless you are up close brawling and bumping into his front, maybe that would be an option, but normally you don't want to go for the first option. Whenever possible, if you can get onto his side armor, you will have a much better success rate at range than being, really like at its front at range, or even up close. Try to get onto that side armor because that side armor is pretty weak. Now the tank is close to impossible to pin at long range when the M103 is at a haul down type position. The only way I found that I was able to defeat the M103 from a haul down position is with artillery or gold rounds. The armor is top notch, and I thank Wargaming for truly not fucking us in the long haul. I do appreciate it, Wargaming, from the bottom of my black heart. I'll say A+ on the armor. It's pretty damn good. Now the mobility on the M103 is pretty good. It's damn good if I can say myself. It's nothing like a medium tank or the Amex 5120, but the mobility is better than the compatriots of the IS-4 and the E-75. Gets to A to B and then C without any trouble, and does pretty well when you're attempting to probe or find weak spots in the enemy front line. You can also keep up with medium tanks who are rushing forward, but you're not going to beat them in a race, so you can provide good fire support with a good speed, with good firepower, and good reload rate with that mobility. You're very capable of turning your front towards the enemy without trouble or issues as long as you don't get tracked, which is all key since your frontal is the badass motherfucking armor that it is and your sides are weaker than dirt. The mobility is key in keeping your tank alive, and also for any other tanks, the balance of keeping the heavy tanks balanced between firepower, armor, and mobility. Mobility is usually lacking, and having really good mobility allows this tank to be pretty damn good. Now overall, I find myself loving the M103. I've heard many horror stories and bad things about the tank on the forums, and I found myself at odds at liking this tank at first. Since getting it, I've been loving it with the fast reload, the great armor, and mobility. Rumors of the tank being OP as shit is bullshit. It can still be defeated fairly easily, especially if the M103 gets too cocky and shows his side armor off. I found when playing with medium tanks with other platoon mates, just let one player fire at the tank at long range to get it pretty much distracted while you're flanking around onto his side armor. The only way the M103 can actually defeat this type of tactic of fire and maneuver is to fall back to avoid having your side armor being shown off and keeping his front towards the enemy, or go ahead and attack that one single player in the hopes of taking them out as quickly as possible instead of allowing that enemy to get onto your side and put fire on. Now, brains are required to play the M103 due to its weaker sides, but if you can manage to keep your front towards the enemy, you'll do alright. Now I get to that part of the video where I get to give away some World of Tanks gold. What up? This week I'm going to be giving away 3,000 gold to the North American server and 2,500 gold to the European Union server. To win said gold, you must be A, be subscribed to my channel, and B, post a comment down below, maybe about the video question, which is, do you think the new American tanks are OP? What do I have to say to this? Maybe? The T110 appears to be overpowered when you happen to only get the frontal of this beast. Thing is, the side armor is pretty weak and it tends to get ammo racked pretty easily and on a reg. I've one-shotted the T110 with my IS-7 with that better critical damage skill for clan wars and pub battles. So its weakness is the side armor, and as long as you can avoid the frontal and put enough rounds into his side armor or even fire at the tracks at a certain angle, you'd be able to do full damage. T110 does give you a workout and a run for your money, but I cannot say it is overpowered. It's just within its balance. The tank is so front heavy that getting onto his sides will defeat it. So that's all I got. I appreciate you guys watching. I won't be putting up another video here in the next couple days for a Q&A, so just keep an eyes out for that. So there you go. I done what I done and I did what I do, so you guys take it easy. I am Pandy, and good hunting.